And we continue with a look at education news coming out of KwaZulu-Natal. The South African Democratic Teachers Union in the province held a picket today demanding action on challenges in the education sector. It has been more than a month now since schools reopened for the third term. Teaching and learning has been progressing in the schools with educators, pupils, and parents facing uncertainty due to the rapid rise in COVID-19 infections in schools. SADTU KwaZulu-Natal presented a memorandum of demands to the provincial government to highlight challenges facing schools as well as teachers. Joining us now to shed more light on their memorandum is SADTU Provincial Secretary Nomarashiya, Caluza. Caluza, good evening. Good to have you with us tonight here on In Focus. 6.3 billion rands cut off the budget. This has had severe impact on the work of the Department of Education in the province, to the extent that the MEC at some point, for example, said that he's got no budget to fix schools that have been vandalized during the unrest. How severe is the situation of the deterioration of schools, but also shortage of teachers?
Thank you, Thabo, and thanks for hosting us. The situation is so bad such that we have no confidence now on whether our learners will be able to take the examination, simply because there has been no teaching and learning since the beginning of the year. A situation that is happening for the first time, where schools have been waiting for the appointment of teachers since the start of the school calendar. But as we've been engaging the department, as you are saying, is the issue of the budget cut. This is the impact of the austerity measures introduced by the National Treasury, which is now affecting and taking away that constitutional right that has been promised to the children of South Africa, that they will have access to quality public education. We're saying in KZN that is history. It's not taking place. And today we had a picket to take it to the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal for the provincial government to reprioritize its programs and also ensure that the activity of the classroom is protected. And protecting it would mean
the secretary there of SADTU in the province. Unfortunately, Mama Nomarashiya, we lost you there a little bit. You had engagement with the Premier today. Are you hoping those engagements will yield any positive results?
We gave the Premier 7 days to look at the demands that we gave him. And he did promise that he will be together with other members in the cabinet and legislature. They will be looking at these issues and possibly come back to us. We also promised him that failure for him to come back to SADTU will necessitate the union on the 25th of August to march to the legislature again to demand the responses. And there are no responses that we are waiting for, except those that will be saying the teachers are being appointed and teachers are being paid, so that we give hope to the parents who are so anxiously waiting for their kids to take the examination. But the question we are asking, what examination if they have not been taught?
Yeah. What happened to the pay of the 2,000 substitute teachers?
The issue here is that, teachers, some of them are on leave, different types of leaves, but also others have retired and resigned. In terms of the law, the Employment of Educators Act, such teachers have to be replaced through the appointment of the substitute educators. The department has dismally failed to do that, even where schools were given a go away in terms of appointing those substitute educators have been told not to come back to the department without getting their pay.
And what is then the response to that particular question from the Department of Education? Why are those teachers not being prioritized and being given permanent position, particularly seeing that the close to 200 schools in the province are without teachers and there's no learning or teaching happening for grade 12s in particular?
For the first time, Thabo, there's consensus from SADTU as well as the MEC and the HOD, that the situation is just like as SADTU is saying. And it's more like both SADTU and HOD and MEC are now looking up to the Premier to make miracles, and the miracles would be for the provincial government to reprioritize and refund, source more funding for the Department of Education. Other than that, they must just declare that there's no education in KZN.
What is happening with the schools in rural areas in particular where there's a continued exodus of learners to urban schools?
It's even worse there because remember, schools in rural areas are those schools that were previously disadvantaged, informed by apartheid legacy. And even now, the difficulty with them is that unlike other former Model C schools, they don't have money or resources to appoint teachers on their own. But also the small and non-viable schools where you find only 2 teachers or 3 teachers in a school expected to be the jack of all trades, that forces parents sometimes to take away their learners from those schools because such schools are not the ideal schools that can give hope to the people of South Africa, as learners there are not able to make choices about the careers they want to take up when they grow older because they are forced by the circumstances to learn what the school can offer, not what they want to be.
What does SADTU then suggest be done, particularly on the question of the grade R teacher qualifications, which you say are not being recognized?
That one is the injustice of the highest order. And we all know that it was happening before, that you can have people with the same qualifications doing similar work but paid differently. What we are saying is that the department must recognize these qualifications, and things that we are saying and things that we're demanding today are things that are happening in other provinces. Our province, KZN, must learn best practices from other government departments and legislatures to see how best they can accommodate these workers. It cannot be correct that you have an employee that has been in the employment of the department for more than 20 years, but when they retire, they have nothing to take home because they don't contribute to the pension, they don't have medical aid, they don't have housing, they can't even benefit from the 37% in lieu of benefits because they are only paid peanuts regardless of the qualifications, the degrees they have.
Now, are you saying to us tonight that you are now in consensus as far as this issue of austerity is concerned, that yourself as the union, but also supported by the MEC himself, that the cost-cutting measures do not make sense? They defeat logic, and therefore they need to be changed. And are you taking that to your alliance partners?
Yes, exactly. That is the sense that we are getting from the MEC, that he is not denying these realities that the union has put forward. In fact, even on Friday, we had a bilateral meeting of SADTU and the MEC and the top management of the Department of Education. And they were in agreement with SADTU that there's nothing to deny here. All what SADTU is presenting are facts. And by the way, it will be difficult for anyone to dispute what we are saying because we have statistics. When we talk of 2000, we know where these posts are. When we say there are substitutes that have not been paid, we know who these substitute educators are. We are also aware in terms of the names and surnames of who the grade R qualified teachers are. So they agree with us, and that is why I'm saying even today they were clear that their hope is with the Premier and the KZN government to sort these challenges.
There's a question of the outstanding rural incentives which have not been paid. How far back do these go, and why have they not been paid to this point?
Rural incentives were not paid last year, 2020. They have not been paid even now. But the issue also is that in KZN, the Department of Education's policy is that they pay to quintile level 1 to 3. But not all schools are getting, which is another challenge. And that is why now we're even considering taking the department to court, because these are the inequalities that we continue to see. If the department is saying it's paying a certain category of schools, they must be taking all the schools that fall within that category and pay teachers accordingly.
Now, this is one area of concern that was also raised by the Premier in his address on the progress in the fight against COVID-19 in the province, is that there is a rising number of infections in schools in particular, and those who are severely affected in the majority are the pupils, showing the highest number of infections. Now, you raise issues of a lack of PPE in some schools, but also you're saying there is a shortage of screeners who take temperature readings. These need to be increased in the schools. I mean, could this be the contributing factor to these rising numbers of infections?
It can, because remember, checking temperatures in the morning every time there's someone getting into the school assist in detecting the high temperatures, which could be a symptom of COVID-19. In the absence of that, it means that schools start late because this one person has to deal with big numbers of learners and teachers who are at school, especially now that primary schools were instructed to take back all the learners to the school. But also, I want to agree with the Premier. In fact, it was part of our memorandum that we are observing the increases and even deaths. And unlike what was said before by scientists that learners and children are not affected by COVID, in KZN now there's an increase in the death cases of learners in schools because of COVID-19. It's a situation that is so bad, and this issue of the department not having funds is also contributing, because the schools that have been asking for the Department of Education to provide sanitizers and other PPEs, no one has responded, because the issue is that there is no money in the department.
All right, Caluza, I appreciate your time, and thank you very much for joining us tonight here on In Focus.